Hello. I came up with this the other day because being on social media, you can get very persuaded into changing your whole life into being about aesthetics and examining black women nowadays. And the reason why I spend so much time, examining black women is because I am a black woman, and because I'm a descendant of Israel who are black. And, all I want to do is help my people come home and anyone else. But the thing is, unfortunately, because many things have been whitewashed, what has happened is, many people that are in these churches, they don't really want to do anything to help the black community. They don't really care. It's not in their heart. And, I'm not necessarily condemning them for that. They've just been taught that everything is white. And so they stick to that. I think it's more ignorance than anything. And then they definitely haven't been taught that the Israelites were black and were scattered on the transatlantic slave trade. And so part of it is many of them think that it's those people over in Israel, which is not true. And many of them are still identifying with, their whitewashed Messiah and that kind of thing. And so many of them, they will not take the effort to go to people that are black. But here I am, and I do believe that the Father will use many black people to go to other black people, especially those who are his and have that lineage. So I believe in the black community there is a huge issue with vanity, narcissism, and I believe that these things have happened because we are trying to compensate for the lack of respect that we've gotten over the years, decades, centuries, actually, in America especially. And so, what we have tried to do is integrate with these other nations, and it doesn't really work too well for the simple fact is we're not called to be these other nations. These other nations, they were made in the image of God, but they have took on the likeness of things in the earth and in the heavens. Fallen angels mostly, and so many of them, they like to do things like I had a video talking about emo night where all these people, they're wearing shirts with goats and demons on them, and they want to dress like these entities in the dark realm and that. And so these are the kinds of things they've taken on. These nations, because of their gods, like the Greek gods, you have, I think his name was Narcissus, you take on the image of those gods and you become in likeness of their character as well. These nations are devoid of spirit. That is why they're doing this thing. That's why they hyper focus on aesthetics. That's why they hyper focus on food. That's why they hyper focus on all the things basically mentioned in Matthew 6, where God tells us not to worry about it. And us, in efforts to try to fit in, we start adapting those things and we end up becoming just as vain and narcissistic as them. Now, there's a goddess named Oshun that I love to mention because she's one of the goddesses whom I can remember some things about. There's another one called Artemis, too, that I can remember some things about. She's the goddess of death, sudden death, in fact. And I believe she's the same as Bastet in Greek mythology, which is why you have movies like Black Panther, because that's actually who it's mimicking. So black people were all excited that this Black Panther movie came out because all they're seeing is, oh, they're representing us. But the fact of the matter is they're representing their gods. And this was a quote-unquote African god, even though really that statement doesn't make any sense. These fallen angels existed way before Africa was called Africa, or humans for that matter. But anyway, the other goddess, you would recognize her in Africa as well, and on Beyonce a lot because she likes to mimic her. Her name is Oshun, and she has several other names because really these angels, they existed all over the world. And so you got in Mexico, her name's Guadalupe. These Mother Earth people, they call her Gaia. Her name is also Isis, Ishtar, Asherah, Ostara, Semiramis, and Queen of Heaven, which is what the Catholics actually worship. So, some things about her. Oshun, she is vain. She's the same as Aphrodite. She's vain, she's the goddess of beauty and fertility, and she's jealous. And so people who worship her, they take on these traits, okay? So you have another goddess, her name's Lilith, and she was like a serpent queen type deal. I mean, this is how they depicted her, at least. They're all serpents. But she was like a goddess of sex. And so, many women I've seen straight up represent this woman. Like, they glorify this woman purposely. And so they take on those traits. And that goes straight against God. Because we shall not make an image of anything in the heavens and the earth. But, we are ignorant. We're blind. We're in the dark. And so we don't know that these things are happening most of the time until you really start to delve into them. Many witches do. People that start to become aware spiritually do. And many witches, they are into that darkness. They actually like it. And part of me is starting to think that for them, maybe they feel like that's really who they are, like that is who they are. Because I've heard several times them say, oh, these gods are just, they're representations of us and we need to just accept that. And someone said the other day, he just has the heart of a beast, and he saw nothing wrong with that, or maybe he did, but the spirit that it was giving was, I feel like I can't do it any better, so I'm just going to accept this identity concerning myself. Because that's the thing, people try to do everything out of their own power, and it doesn't work. Why? Because we are spiritual beings inside a body, and that spirit comes from God himself. So when people are devoid of God through their sins and through trying to be like the world, then they end up again in these places of vanity and narcissism and self-exaltation and pride and all these kinds of things that reflect the dark kingdom. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I see this very heavily in the Black community. I believe myself as a Black woman and someone who was in the dark, that I was doing a lot of the things that I was doing because I, like everyone else, was sold a lie that having all these nice things and looking a certain way, that is what would give you life. And then I got to the point, I was getting all this attention and that kind of thing, and I was traveling, whatever, but things weren't changing. It didn't change until I came to God, because again, we're spiritual beings, and that spirit that lives in us comes from God. So when I started changing my heart, my inward man, that's when I started to notice a change. And unfortunately, you can't serve two masters. So if your master is, some God who puts that spirit of vanity and narcissism in you, then how are you going to have room for the God of life? You can't. And so what people end up doing is destroying one another. I mean, I use this example a lot because it's true to my own experience and probably many people's experiences. But, for me, I grew up in a single parent home, always have had trouble with just friends backbiting and backstabbing and all that kind of stuff. And I get grown up and get to work and the same things happen. People are trying to get money and provide for their vanity and this kind of stuff. And so they don't mind murdering people spiritually in order to do that, so that they can keep their aesthetics. You don't think that these people of these other nations aren't doing that? We know about the slave trade that's going on in the Congo right now. Well, people are allowing that because they don't want to give up the aesthetics. They don't want to give up their luxuries, so they continue allowing this to happen. Now, what we have going on, like this man, people that call themselves high value, to me, it's just narcissism, honestly. They believe that their value comes from, having money, looking a certain way. And you know what? To be honest, if a man looks like this man right here, many women are going to swoon over him because he does look like he has money and he's in good physical shape. But because of these sins of man, women, and I'm not talking about man like males, but mankind, women included, are blinded in their minds. So they think to have a good man means to have a man that has these outward qualities. Well, the thing is, if you focus on the outward too much, you will not focus on your inward man. And so, like this man holding the diamond, he also has an axe in his hand. Now, we know that these people will do anything for, luxury, money, status, and that kind of stuff, including take an axe to the nearest human being. So because they want those things, because they have that spirit of lust and greed and vanity, that's exactly what they end up doing. And they cannot hold, healthy relationships because of their depletedness of spirit. Because they are concerned about outward appearance, they often will look for a woman because of her appearance. And it ends up being a vicious cycle, because they might find a woman who is their type, that looks great. She's got a banging body and her hair looks like a European's and whatever the deal is. But, at the end of the day, the woman's only concerned about her appearance. So they don't really serve each other much other than for appearances. Enter the destruction of the black family unit, or rather the Israelite family unit. This is exactly what's going on, especially over here in the U.S. Now, the women cannot find decent men. The men can't find decent women. The decent women, they might want a decent man. But the unfortunate thing is, when the inward quality is depleting and the outward quality seems to be increasing, then it just, a decent person becomes, just not available. And so in turn, what people do is they keep getting more. They keep focusing more on appearance, these kinds of things. So we have these women today that are like Jezebels. Now, if you guys don't know who Jezebel is, she was a woman in the Bible who tried to unalive a prophet named Elijah. And Elijah's job is, he's like the alarm before the Messiah comes. And so Jezebel, she did things like use her beauty to get what she wanted. She was manipulative. She was a narcissist herself. And for whatever reason, many black women, from what I've been noticing lately, they really think this behavior is almost cute. I don't know why they think it's cute. I want to say it's because there's a lack of identity there. There's a lack of truth. And so again, they're trying to surround their identities around what they see in the world. And because of them basing this on their flesh, they lose their spirit. And then demonic spirits set up in them, like Jezebel, and that's who they become. These women become gossipers, they become backbiters, they become without natural affection. I have seen the most ugly behaviors from black women since being a child. Ugly, even from my own family, and that says a lot. Now, because I understand that there's so much brokenness in the black community, I have compassion for them and I have empathy for them, but they make it very difficult because it's like a constant attack with many of them. And you know what? My thing is, revenge is of the Lord, but this has to stop. It's time to stop worrying about your hair weave. It's time to stop worrying about your eyelashes. It's time to stop worrying about your bodycon dress and what foundation matches your face. And it's time to turn your life over to God, because the Spirit of God is bringing upon a judgment in the world. And the judgment comes first to the house of Israel, whom many are lost. So I'm going to read to you Isaiah 3. And this is about the judgment upon Israel, upon the women of Israel, whom, some knew they were Israel, and I'm sure some did not. And Yahuwah says, because the daughters of Zion are haughty and walk with outstretched necks and seductive eyes, walking and mincing as they go, making a jingling with their feet. Therefore Yahuwah shall smite with a scab the crown of the head of the daughters of Zion, and Yahuwah expose their nakedness. So these women out here, they are actually in nakedness. It is something that is on the inside of them actually manifesting itself outwardly, which is why many of them are walking around exposing their chests and these short skirts. And I know, because I was that woman. In fact, I got to the point where I was posing with bikinis on. I was haughty. I was prideful. I was walking around with seductive eyes. I thought I was that thing, and I would do anything to attract the attention of a man. And this is why I ended up dressing in that way, and because I got all this attention, it ended up making me prideful. So it says, In that day, Yahuwah takes away the finery of the anklets and the headbands and the crescents, the pendants, the bracelets, and the veils. So this is actually something the Father did. He actually had me cut my hair because a woman that's won in war, God had commanded the Israelite men to cut their hair off, these women of other nations, if they wanted to take them as a wife. And I believe it's representing cutting the glory of that woman. The glory is no longer for yourself, it's for the Father. Now, he also had me stop wearing makeup, and he had me stop wearing earrings, because I was putting my value in those things. I was worshiping those things more than I was worshiping God. And that's the thing. We cannot put anything above God. And so this is why I'm talking about the black community trying to fit in with the nations, trying to have their cars and trying to have their money and trying to have their jewels and, all, what do they call it? The luxury aesthetic, classy aesthetic. I guarantee these things are not going to matter in a year, less than a year, because everyone is going to be humbled to the point where nobody will have anything, no one will have any money, and everybody will be on equal ground. You will see that none of those things mattered in the first place, because when you have Chinese foot soldiers and Russian foot soldiers hitting the ground, your money, your jewels, your car, your expensive watches, your expensive Louis Vuitton purse will mean nothing to these Chinese soldiers. You will not be able to buy your way out of your own death. And the only one that is going to be able to protect you will be the Most High. And whoever calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. So the Father had me remove all these things, or he removed them from me, so that I could not put my energy in those things. And don't get me wrong, it's not as if the Father doesn't let me wear bracelets. I wear 2 bracelets, one that says I can do all things through Christ, and another one that says do good, and the other charm says something else. But at this point, I don't idolize them. So he's stripping the Israelites of these things because they began to think their outward beauty was more important than their inward beauty. So he takes away their rings, their nose jewels, their costly robes, and the cloaks and the shawls and the purses, everything. The mirrors, the fine linen, the turbans, the large veils, and it shall be, instead of a sweet fragrance, a smell of decay, and instead of a belt, a rope, instead of a well-set hair, baldness, instead of festal robe, a girding of sackcloth and branding instead of loveliness. So I can actually attest to this as well. When I started to get haughty, first off, I had a lot of hair, a lot of hair, and I think because I was not putting in the work concerning God that I was doing previously, my hair literally started to fall out. And I got scabs as well. So when he says these things, he's not playing. So it says, your men shall fall by the sword and your strength in battle. So when this judgment comes, many of these black men, these descendants of Israel, they are actually going to fall. This spiritual warfare is right now. It's right now. And, what I'm seeing is a lot of people, they're growing weak. You can see it in their eyes. You can see it because many people just aren't interacting with people. And that's because they are growing weak in battle. And they do not have the sword of the Spirit or any of the spiritual warfare armor. And so they don't know how to fight it. And it says, her gates shall lament and mourn, and she deserted shall sit on the ground. Now I'm going to jump back to verse 8. It says, for Jerusalem has stumbled and Yehuda has fallen because their tongue. Doesn't the Bible talk about it is hard for a man to bridle their tongues? The way some of these black people that are probably descendants of Israel, the way that they speak to people, my whole body started to cringe. It was disgusting the way they were slandering people and gossiping about people. I was like, I don't know how you're going to survive this judgment, because the fact that you cannot bridle your tongue over the dumbest things, the way that you speak about women, the way that you speak about just people who are black but have different personalities than you, it is out of control. You trash the righteous people. Many of you do. You trash them. And there's also judgment for that, because many people that are descendants of the Israelites, they have come to know God, and you have trashed them as one that has not. And you will recompense concerning that. The fact that you love listening to rap diss music, that you love cussing people out, that you love embarrassing people, you will pay for that. You believe it's your culture to diss people, when at the end of the day, you're going to reap what you sow, Israel. This is why it says here that, your tongue is out of control. The way that you speak about your children, yelling at them inside the store, cussing them out, calling your 4-year-old children the B word and all these kinds of things, you're going to recompense for that. Not to mention, I believe it's black women are responsible for the most abortions out of any other woman. You will also recompense for that. And you are currently recompensing for it right now. The Father said a millstone will be hung around the neck of anyone that harms a little child. Now, I do definitely believe that a child also represents someone that is young in the faith, but the Father is not playing about children in general. The disrespect that I see from black people concerning children, their own children, phenomenal. I've seen it with other races, but I have never seen it as much as I have seen with black people. And because of your disrespect being a stumbling block toward your children, they end up growing up with very similar issues, and they do the same things to their children. Their children are not healthy because you were not healthy. And so this curse passes on and on and on. The Father hates it. Your tongue and your doings are against Yahuwah to provoke the eyes of his esteem. The look on their faces witnesses against them, and they declare their sin as Sodom. Now, Sodom is Sodom and Gomorrah. Part of the issue of Sodom and Gomorrah was, I believe, homosexuality as well as pride or greed. I think it was greed. And so, this is what he's saying about you who descend from Israel. Many of you don't know who you are. You have the problem of homosexuality, and you have the problem of greed and probably pride and many things. Sodom built up their sins, and so all those things were added to them. And guess what happened to Sodom? They were burned. That whole city was set on fire. And it says here, you have brought that evil upon yourselves. Now, I don't know if it's because I'm on social media a lot, but the fact that you believe that twerking your hind tail for the world to see is part of your culture, and so you do it, and you believe that this is normal, that to me screams Sodom and Gomorrah. The fact that these men out here, they want to sleep with as many women as possible. Do you understand? You are defiling your own body, that you're defiling the bodies of other people, and that you're passing demons around. Because when you engage in a sexual act with someone, that is exactly what happens. Then your mind becomes addicted to it. It becomes defiled, and that's all you can think about. So enter fathers that don't want to stay in the home because their minds are addicted to sex and they want everything walking. You will recompense for that. It is not normal to be exposing your body like that. That's not normal. That is something that has happened because society says this is what's attractive now. We have to be half naked because we have to get the attention to be half naked. We have to wear the low shirt because this is what everyone's doing now. We have to be sexy. We have to do that. So it's funny because I have been talking for a while and people are passing and this lady looks back at me and a couple people look back at me and they're like, oh my gosh, what is she talking about? Because this is the mentality of people today. Oh, just leave it alone. Let people do what they want to do. And you too will pay for that. Because you're perpetuating the evil, you're not addressing it. Say to the righteous, it is well, for they eat the fruit of their doings. Woe to the wrong, evil, for the reward of his hand is done to him. Like I said, you will repay for your wickedness. My people, youth exert pressure on them, and women rule over them. And what do you see today concerning the black family unit? No fathers in the house. Grandma's there, grandpa's not there, mom's there, dad's not there. And guess who's taking care of all this? It's the women, yeah, because the men are out sleeping around and not taking care of their responsibilities. And I know because I was raised by a single mother. Now, I definitely believe that the role of the mom is important. However, the role of the father is important too. And our families will likely have a lot easier time if both the mom and the dad were in the home. If you don't love each other, you need to learn how to love each other. And that comes from God. It says, "Oh, my people, your leaders lead you astray and swallow the way of your past." And who are your leaders? You know, you have people that are in the church. I mean, I've come across a lot of Masonic pastors and witches in the pulpit, but just leaders in general, you know? The people that you listen to on the radio, a lot of times these people become your leaders. They become your idols. You want to follow them. You want to do what they tell you to do, and you end up in the worst places ever. Many teenagers, children, they have literally unalived people because they heard it in a rap song. That's sad. Yahuwah shall stand up to plead, and standing to judge the peoples. Yahuwah enters into judgment with the elders of his people and its heads. It is you who have been eating up the vineyard. The plunder of the poor is in your houses. So, speaking about, really, the leaders they look like everything at this point, but considering many of these people are in the church, black people, descendants of Israel, people that do believe, you are letting people like T.D. Jakes, people like Creflo Dollar, people like Joel Osteen, people like Stephen Furtick, you're letting these people lead you astray. And even in your local churches, you're letting these people, because you're not spending your time with God so that he can show you the truth so that you don't get led astray by these fake pastors. I mean, it was crazy because this girl, you can tell a Christian for aesthetics versus somebody who's serious. This girl's standing in this photo talking about she loves Jesus, and she's sticking her tongue out. Now, a lot of people do this typically when they're feeling themselves. That's why you see a lot of dancers doing it when they're doing a really great job at their dancing, and they stick their tongue out, Megan Thee Stallion. Understand that these things don't come from nowhere. That is a reference to Kali, the goddess of death, all right? Look her up. She literally is sticking out her tongue. You know, her husband his name is Shiva, who is a destroyer. And so this is who these people are worshiping, which, by the way, Megan Thee Stallion, his original name is, I don't remember, but it's definitely a man's name. And so this is what we're glorifying. It's not good. What do you mean by crushing my people and grinding their faces of the poor, declares the master, Yahuwah of hosts? I mean, I spent some time in Chattanooga a few years ago. There's a freaking church on every corner, yet there's so many homeless people, all sorts of stuff. People just show up to church on Sunday. Many of them aren't really trying to do anything. And if they are, it's typically just for their family and their friends. But that's not really how God operates, because, as it says in the Bible, don't the tax collectors even do that? However, out of her ignorance, she says, "I love Jesus," and then proceeds to laugh at me. Now, if you love Jesus, would you not try to do things to please him? You're not supposed to have any other God before the Father and his Son. So why are you laughing? And this is how many of these people are. They're without knowledge, they're without understanding, because they have been sitting under these false pastors in their vanity. Because you go to some of these churches, I went to Michael Todd's church in Tulsa, and he was just sitting on the stage counting money. I was like, are y'all blind? Like, why are you sitting under this pastor? He's clearly false. But he said, "I'll give a strong delusion to those who love not the truth." And when you're so distracted by the appearances, I'm showing up this Sunday in my Sunday best, I gotta wear my hat, and I gotta wear my trench coat and my boots, and I'm gonna be the best looking one in the church. You done made it all about your outfit and not about your heart. And that's why you stay in these congregations under these false pastors. But don't get me wrong, these pastors will also be judged for leading you astray. You're all going to be judged because we reap what we sow. So this is what I mean. Now, the lady's pretty. However, look at the eyes. Look at the way she's gazing. Look at the red lips. Look at the exposed cleavage. Look at the hair that is more than likely not hers. Now, this is where we're at. This is giving Jezebel so hard. The haughty, wanton eyes, the prideful look, the side eye. I would say it's like sexy side eye. The cleavage, look at my body. The hair. And God talks in the Bible about the women of Israel being concerned about their braids. I mean, who else is this talking about? It's almost like a normal part of black women or culture or whatever to get braids and talk about your braids. And, look, guys, it's not about your braids. Spend less time on your braids and more time on your heart. Because the fact of the matter is, your braids can be popping, but your inward man is ugly. And you're going to be judged for that. It doesn't matter if I judge you, if that next person judges you, whatever the deal. The judgment is going to come from God. And I guarantee it's going to be way worse than anything you can ever experience. I'm just warning you. That's it. And this was me before I came to God. I guess I said I'm in my evil phase right now, so I'm going to try to look as evil as possible. I definitely was looking like a villain, but I think despite the fact I feel blessed that I did not go too far, to the point where I was utterly destroying people, but I was doing a lot of things that were against God. But I did have a heart for people still. But there's a lot of people that do not, and they do a lot of reckless things. And, we have to get out of this because it's destroying us. I brought up the family unit, how it's destroying that. It's defiling people's temple to be so concerned about sex. It's defiling people's minds to be utterly concerned about greed, And so, we have to do better. Look at this. I would almost think this was cute if there wasn't so much being exposed. Why do we feel like we have to expose our legs and expose our breast? Why do we feel like that? Because I feel as though that is supposed to be left between you and your husband and between you and God. And that's it. This is not ladylike. I know that the dresses are long and that kind of thing. However, our bodies are supposed to be temples. Why are we putting them on display for everyone to see? Not everyone could go into Israel's temple despite popular belief. The fact is, only those who believed could go to the temple. Those that were outside of the temple, they would be invited into, people's homes and that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they couldn't go to the temple. We have these kinds of things going on, and these kinds of things are actually going on in the church. I don't know what Christian woman needed to hear this, but a bodycon dress is not appropriate for a Christian woman. We need to wear looser clothing. We need to cover up our bits and our parts because the Heavenly Father is watching these kinds of things. This is why in Timothy and in Peter, it talks about being clothed in modesty. Now, modesty, of course, isn't only an outward thing, it's an inward thing. Like I said earlier, God said He would expose our nakedness, and that thing is manifested outwardly through people wearing these little bits of clothing. This woman has an immodest heart. This is why she is wearing this immodest dress. She believes her value comes from her body and how to expose it and the validation of man. Therefore, she dresses to honor that. And it's the same with this couple. Now, of course, they have beautiful bodies. She's got an hourglass figure, which I guess that's, a popular body shape. And he's got that A shape or triangle shape. And he's very muscular. But at the end of the day, this is not what matters. What matters is your heart. Because while these two may look good outwardly, what are they doing inwardly? If you are working on your heart, then you, who's wearing a cross around your neck, and I believe both of them are actually wearing crosses, you're not going to show up to the beach like this. You're going to want to honor God in everything that you do, including how you dress. We're not called to be naked as believers. We're called to be clothed. We're called to be modest. These two look like the world, and I know because I've been to several beaches around the world, and plenty of bikinis are to be found. Plenty of shirtless men are to be found. Why? Because they too are looking for the gratification of man and not of God. Now, this man I thought looked really great. I really feel as if he's modest. It looks like he's wearing a linen suit. And so he looks cool because linen is a wonderful fabric for the summer, and it actually has a frequency of 5,000 megahertz, so it actually has the ability to heal you when you wear it. So men of God need to be dressing like this. In my opinion, even men of the world can dress like this. It doesn't have to exactly be this style, but we need to cover up our bodies. And women of God also need to cover up their bodies, like I said previously. And this woman, she's wearing a high neck dress. I mean, your dress doesn't have to be high neck, but you want to make sure that your cleavage is not exposed. She's wearing a longer sleeve dress. I'm not really sure how long the dress is, but overall, it gives a modest appearance to it. Now, I thought this was absolutely beautiful. The thing is, when you come down the path of trying to avoid God burning you like Sodom and Gomorrah, it's a little slow. You start off maybe wearing longer dresses, like maybe to your knees, and maybe something a little more high neck or whatever the deal is. But God typically changes your heart. And then you start getting to places like this. Now, I'm not there yet, but I have a feeling that it's coming very soon, because me personally, I'm just bored with all the nudity and the nakedness. I think this is so beautiful. She looks gorgeous. I mean, the fabric has this nice luster to it. It looks very like ethereal and angelic type deal. And I believe this is the innocence that God wants his women and men to display. And I would think a lot of men, whether they're in the world or whether they're in the church, they would also think that this is beautiful. And here's some examples of something men can also wear in the summertime. Now, it might be a little hot for, the green shirts, and you don't necessarily have to wear that shirt with a tie, if you're just trying to be casual. But, it looks lightweight, and those shoes are really amazing too, actually, if you're a person that's out on vacation or something. And then on the left, I just really love this, other than the fact that it looks kind of see-through and it's a little tight for my taste. But I think that overall, it's a good outfit that's attractive and that's modest. So me personally, I'm a traveler, and one of the things that I have prayed to God about is, how do I travel? How do I encourage people who do travel to dress modestly? Because a lot of the times when you get online, when you're on Instagram and you're looking at, travel photos, influencer photos and that kind of thing, you're going to see a lot of nakedness, you're going to see a lot of nudity, because that's what sells. And honestly, I believe a lot of black women especially are turning to traveling because they realize there's more out here, number one, or maybe that's number two, but number one, they can't get what they want or need here in the world. They can't get husbands, they can't get respect, these kinds of things. And so they're turning to traveling because at least they can experience something new, learn more about themselves, etc. And perhaps they'll see some changes in their life. But with that said, people become a victim of that which they're surrounded by. So what you see on Instagram is a lot of nakedness. Well, I'm here to show you that you don't have to be half naked and take decent travel photos. You can clothe yourself in modesty and still look attractive. And even if you're not traveling, you can do the same. Modesty is not a death sentence, guys. And in fact, when you start to dress more modestly, you will notice that many people will give you more respect, especially men, because In my opinion, men are hardwired to desire a woman that is modest. Many women get put to the side because they want to walk in their nakedness. And while you might be having fun going on dates and he's paying for this and paying for that, you might miss the boat concerning being a wife. Now, I imagine someone will say, well, do you have a husband? The answer is no. However, I do have the power and I do have authority to say no to any man, to tell him, like, it's not okay to touch me. It's not okay to talk anyway with me, because I have learned through my modesty journey that just like the Bible says, I'm worth more than rubies. And I wouldn't feel that way if God didn't tell me that I was, and that I can cover up my body and still be a woman of worth. In fact, when I cover up my body, I am perceived with more worth. Because let's be honest, many people out here, they will feed on your lack of security in that you don't want to clothe your own temple. They will take advantage of that. It's happened to me several times. Therefore, guys and girls, we need to practice modesty. We need to come up out of her and stop partaking in her sins.